Yesterday, the House passed legislation that will suspend the U.S. debt ceiling into December 2022 and provide the government funding to operate past September 30th. The bill, which was passed along party lines in a vote of 220 to 211, averts a looming government shutdown, and it now heads to the Senate, where it is expected to face major opposition. Democrats will need 10 Republican votes for passage in the Senate. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has been clear that the GOP will not, quote, relieve Democrats from their governing obligation to address the debt ceiling. And according to reports from the Hill this morning, Republican Senators Kevin Cramer and John Kennedy stressed that McConnell isn't bluffing and will refuse to budge on the issue. Democratic strategist, the maestro himself, and Obama administration alum Roger Fisk is here, and former chairwoman of the Nevada State GOP and Republican strategist Amy Tarkanian join us now to weigh in. Amy, what's your read? How close to the brink is McConnell willing to take this? The last time Congress did this, it lopped about a fifth off of the stock market and resulted in a credit downgrade. And it looks like they plan to just, touch the stove again.
Right, and this seems to happen almost every year. So it's unfortunate because a lot of people are used as pawns when this happens. You have federal employees whose paychecks will be stalled. You have national parks that will be closed down if the government is shut down. And so it's vital to keep the government open and functioning. It does seem that Mitch McConnell is standing firm. We do have one Republican senator on the record stating that he will vote for it, and that's Louisiana Senator Kennedy, but that's due to the disaster relief that is needed because of the hurricane. He does state, though, that he's not happy with the rest of the laundry list of items that the Democrats have coupled keeping the government open with. And that's, I think, where the problem lies with most Republicans, is that they would just like to see the government open, but they don't like the fact that they're throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Now, of course, this also happened under President Trump, where the government did shut down for a short time, but it was estimated that we lost roughly $1.5 billion per week. So this is very important that we keep things open and running.
I would very much so agree, but I think it's a kind of key time for some horse trading, and I think McConnell's banking on it's a good moment that we can try to extract some concessions from Democrats. Now, a little bit of a micro drama was brewing in the House yesterday when progressives pushed back on having funding for Israel's Iron Dome in the CR included, and I would love to get your perspective as an Obama alumni. This was a result of a communique, an agreement between the Obama administration and Israel in about 2015, I believe, of continuing a steady level of U.S. support for Iron Dome. Are progressives now in such a different place from even Obama progressives that they're now wanting to cancel what isn't even additional funding, it's continued agreed to funding?
Sure. Well, first off, good morning, and to Ryan and Alyssa, and it's wonderful to be here with Amy, and thank you for having me. Very briefly to Amy's points and to the larger point, and then I'll get to your specific question. Few things are a more perfect vehicle for posturing and kind of a lot of hollow talk in politics than raising the debt ceiling. And I know everyone currently on the show and everyone watching knows that we are addressing debts already incurred. It's important to remember that this is Trump debt that we're obliged to meet. And I don't say that in necessarily a partisan sense, but I'm saying this is money that's already gone out the door, right? Like this is this past fiscal year. And unfortunately, people tend to treat it as a legitimate vehicle to posture and position themselves as somehow fiscally responsible, when in fact the ship has already left the port. This is money that's already gone out the door. To Amy's point and to your specific question very briefly, I think that now you're seeing that each side and kind of the extremes of each side are peeling off certain things, making issues about certain things, and looking to add certain things. I will take one issue with how Amy framed this, which is when at least the initial government shutdown happened, it's because the president wouldn't sign a budget that didn't have wall funding in it. And when it came for the Senate to pass the debt ceiling increase that the House did. It was passed, I believe, 65-28. So also what you're seeing here is the kind of sustained GOP narrative that it's not what's best by way of their oath or what's best by way of their duties to the American people. They want to torpedo the Biden presidency because it's looked upon as what's best for Trump. That's how they're acting here, in stark contrast to how the Democrats acted when both in the House and in the Senate in 2019, Democrats crossed the aisle to support the president.
And on the reconciliation package, real quickly, so last night, Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the Progressive Caucus, and Nancy Pelosi met for almost 2 hours. Jayapal told Pelosi, look, if you try to pass this budget bill, this bipartisan infrastructure bill on Monday without also bringing forward the reconciliation bill, we have the votes to block it. Let's take a listen to what she told Jake Tapper.
How many members are there of the House Democratic Progressive Caucus?
There are 96 members, and over half are absolutely committed to making sure we deliver both bills at the same time.
So 48 Democrats will vote against the House infrastructure bill if it does not come with the budget reconciliation package. Is that right?
More than half of our members will vote for both bills. And this was the deal, Jake, that came out of the Senate when progressive senators passed the bipartisan bill in the Senate. It was on the specific understanding and commitment that both bills would move together. And so now we want to make sure that both bills are moving together, and we're going to hold to that commitment. And so, yes, half our members, more than half our members, will not move the bipartisan bill without the reconciliation bill being passed.
And so, Roger, that's a bold claim. We talked earlier on this show about a joint project that The Intercept, the Daily Poster, and the American Prospect did, where we tried to get names to attach to that whip list. We came up with 16 names of people who were publicly willing to say that they were going to do what Jayapal is saying. She's claiming that she has 3 to 4 times that number. She says that a number of them are private; they're not ready to go public. Because if you go public, that's a little bit more aggressive toward your leadership or toward the centrists in your party. Do you buy it? And how do you see this playing out on Monday when Pelosi is supposed to put onto the floor the bipartisan bill as a result of her deal with the Gottheimer gang?
Right. It is fascinating. One has to think long and hard before they get into a staring contest with Nancy Pelosi. There's not a mountain of examples where that has gone well for people. And I think what's going to happen, and to talk first about the Democratic side, but then broader, is that the doors are going to get closed. You have this confluence of the end of Afghanistan, which I don't think is as bad, both politically and policy-wise, as it's being portrayed. You have the ongoing vaccine. You have the southern border, any number of other dynamics. And whatever the Biden administration is going to get done in the first term is going to be done this year. And so even the progressives and the moderates need to go home by the holidays with some kind of tangible kitchen table win. And I would submit even to broaden, as I mentioned I would, that the GOP members will, which is why you see a Senator Kennedy from Louisiana being willing to talk about infrastructure, because they're living the results of our neglect right now. So I think there's going to be a larger, sober conversation about whether or not Congress itself as an institution can produce anything. And then once they agree that that's required, which I think it is both politically and policy-wise and within the context of their duties to the American people, that they will realign themselves and at least get around the basic infrastructure package. And then there'll have to be a series of promises and procedural steps laid out for some of the other things. But I think this will get narrowed down to some kind of tangible win that everyone can walk away from and go back to their districts and home states with towards the end of the year.
Very interesting. And Amy, I want to ask you, because I think we all agree government shutdowns are not a good thing. It's deeply unfair to the American public, to federal workers. But what was interesting about the last government shutdown under President Trump the Republicans still picked up seats in the midterm. So I'm curious, do you think that government shutdowns still have the sort of power that they used to scare people out of doing them because of a fear of you're going to lose your seat if you can't keep the government open?
Well, I think it's a little bit of what Roger touched on, as well as what you just mentioned. I think that actually the majority of the American public who pay attention, that is, to the politics of the government shutdown are pretty much numb to it, and it's expected. But Roger's correct in stating that both sides will want a shiny trophy to take home to show their constituents on what they did and how they did it, and if they did it well, so that way they can pat themselves on the back. Now, of course, we have midterm elections coming up, and so you're going to see both sides jockeying, to make sure that they are able to keep the positions that they currently have or pick up more seats. So you're going to hear rhetoric from both sides in this topic.
And Roger, last question. If it looks like the bill is going to go down on Monday, why wouldn't President Biden and Speaker Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer for that matter too, just say, you know what, the entire caucus should vote this down because we want to stay on the two-track strategy. Keep the two tracks alive by voting this down, and we'll take it up again. And then in the media, it doesn't play like a loss.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about whether or not the caffeine kind of win for that 48-hour news cycle window is worth abrogating one's responsibilities to their oath and to their office. I like to think that the kind of DNA of Schumer and Pelosi are a little bit more sober and a little bit more aligned with their institutional responsibilities. I can understand why someone would entertain that because it's digestible and it's kind of a sugar high. But in the long run, I don't think it's sober and responsible policy. So I'm not going to say here that I think it's impossible that they would do that, but I think it would be unwise.
Right. We'll see. Interesting discussion. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on Rising, friend of the show, Brianna Joy Gray, will join us to break down the shocking images from the Texas-Mexico border. Stay tuned.